As we trudged across the almost barren landscape before us, with undead warriors on either side ensuring escape was impossible, I couldn't help my mind wondering about our fellows who were captured back in Meira. The strong Jannar with a gentle centre, the fearsome Reishi with a vast tenacity, and the charming Triana with her kind demeanour. Two were close friends of mine and Garth. The other was the sister of Tristane, who meanwhile walked behind me. Deep down, I dreaded to imagine what was going through his mind at this moment. Not only had his sister been captured and taken not even a day or so prior, but now one of his father's own guards, whom he had formerly pledged so much loyalty in, was leading us to our next trial. I still remember the first instance of Tristane stepping in for me over Aras, appearing almost unstoppable in his stance, yet I felt it couldn't compare to the betrayal he must now be feeling. In the same instant, I felt in some way this betrayal had been coming for some time. For all we knew, Aras could have been pledging himself to a centuries-dead king all along, and we would have been none the wiser. The mist seemed to pulsate as the undead warriors continued to guide us along in unison. It swarmed and dispersed around them, not unlike a wave on a shore, as it rose and receded. Their mail chinked softly, and their bony bodies rattled with each step they took. The mist, as it swarmed, seemed to almost reshape how they must have appeared in life, before they became as hollow as they were in the undead state. Amongst the chinking and rattling, a subtle sound of weeping came from my side, as my brother gripped my hand tightly. Garth had experienced so much, too much, for his young mind to have comprehended within the last few days. So much death and loss in so short a time. We didn't speak a word, but in a sense we didn't have to, as the grip of each other's hands told us more than we ever could have said with words. Above us, the sky grew darker as evening began to set in. Not that it was that noticeable through the mist, but it still gave a sense of foreboding, as though we were heading straight for Halk. From the mist and darkness expelled the ruins of a vast grey citadel, not too dissimilar to Meira with its mighty walls and battlements. We passed through the large wooden gates, and a shiver ran down my spine as I took in the chilling display before me. All the once proud and magnificent buildings now crumbling away into dust. Windows hollowed out, not a pane left in place. Wooden doors smashed and rotting. The remains of several blacksmith stations now dank and hollow. Tufts of brown grass or moss sprouting up from the roads and paths, and high above it all, the crumbling citadel itself, silhouetted against the darkening sky. Our footfalls echoed on the stone as we passed through the empty streets leading up to the citadel. The undead warriors' bones rattling and chinking armour echoed louder in the empty air as we climbed higher and higher towards the decrepit dark monument. Every so often I got the feeling this city was once very much like Meira, with its many citizens and bustling noise, but no longer. Despite the deafening silence, none of us spoke. Not even Tristane or Valtaire uttered a word. As we approached the doors to the citadel, an all too familiar feeling of foreboding fell over me, but I knew we would have to enter eventually. We stopped before the doors as Aras turned to face us once more. He raised a firm finger and pointed directly at us, indicating Tristane and I. "These two are to be taken to the throne room. The boy and other man can be thrown into the cells with the others." Garth gripped me tightly, almost screaming into the growing night. "No! Don't separate us!" I knelt down and embraced Garth swiftly, even gently kissing his forehead as mother would have. "Be strong, brother. I will see you again. I promise." Garth fought back his tears as he and Valtaire were guided towards the gates to the cells by 4 of the undead warriors. Tristane and I stood firm as we watched them disappear beyond before Aras addressed us once more. Now, you two, follow me. Tristane and I climbed carefully, as the steps almost groaned from our weight upon them. Undead warriors still either side of us, as we were led down several grand corridors to another set of mighty doors, beyond which lay any number of possible things. Aras raised his hand and hammered twice upon the door's surface before lowering it once more. From within, a hoarse, almost wizened voice cried out, "Enter!" The doors were drawn open by two struggling undead warriors, whose strength had left them centuries before. Entering into the vast throne room, I was overcome by a heaviness I had not felt since Mayra, yet it wasn't through majesty so much as the dankness of the room itself. I dreaded to imagine how long it had been like this, but I needn't have been concerned with it, as I took in the figure sat within the throne upon the dais. His skin was grey and taut across his skeletal frame, which was only masked by the large puffed akheton and jacket he wore. His eyes, what there was of them, were bloodshot and clouded, yet he seemed to see well enough. What lines appeared across his face were just distinguishable against the hewn cheeks and pointed chin. His hair, at least what remained, was wiry and draped across his shoulders, whilst his once gilded crown almost slumped across his ghostly scalp. As he opened his mouth to speak, what remained of his teeth glistened like pearls in the subtle light from the now rising moon outside the windows. The once great king Viandor, now a withered husk, was still with the world. "Who enters our court this eve?" his cold, hoarse voice enunciated. Aras knelt before him, his head bowed in respect. "Your Majesty, I am Aras, your devoted and honored servant. I bring you two who would seek to end your reign over these lands, so they might receive judgment by your hand." The withered husk rose from his throne and stepped towards the kneeling Aras, stretching out his skeletal hand, upon which sat a singular ring. Aras lightly pressed his lips to the ring and bowed his head once more. "You have done well, my lord Aras. You shall be rewarded handsomely," Viandor exclaimed, slowly making his way towards us. Tristane's eyes burned intensely, whether with anger or pain I couldn't be sure. Viandor's skeletal hand reached up and brushed against Tristane's cheek. "My descendant?" he asked softly, his foul breath almost choking Tristane, who nodded silently. His bloodshot gaze fell across me next, as his withered body compelled him forward. His skeletal hand reached my chest, almost over my heart as he spoke. "And what of you?" I coughed as his breath expelled towards me. "Lukah, son of Valk," I stated hoarsely. A harsh smile curled across Viandor's face as he heard father's name. From within him then came a cold, hoarse laugh as he turned away from me. My inner fire roared within me as the laugh echoed around the room. "Take them to the cells, Aras, and have preparations made for their execution," Viandor finally declared as he returned to his throne. Aras rose from the floor and bowed his head in respect. "It shall be done,"